What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. I've covered all sorts of different Pokemon abilities and various lights in the past, because it's one of my favorite aspects added to the Pokemon games over the years. We didn't always have abilities, but every Pokemon after Gen 3 has had one or more extra conditions assigned to them, but just imagine, what if they didn't? How would it change Pokemon if there were no abilities? Who would benefit the most? And who would crash and burn? Now you might say, who cares? It's not like they'll get rid of abilities. True, not on a grand scale, but we did just see a complete removal of abilities in the Let's Go games. It didn't matter to some of the Pokemon, but others were highly affected. Mega Kangaskhan couldn't even use its greatest weapon. So it'll probably happen again in the Let's Go Johto games, or at the very least there could be a special circumstance in an isolated battle, like the inverse battles of Gen 6, where they shut off abilities. So let's just see how this could affect what Pokemon might become much better, or fall out of the limelight. So what would be some of the downsides? There would be several vague annoyances like losing Poison Point, or if, say, the Intimidate ability went away. Lowering a Pokemon's attack at the start of every battle is always handy, but most Pokemon that can get Intimidate don't rely on it to do their work, so I don't think losing that would make anyone turn back on deciding to use one of these Pokemon. Except for maybe Staravia. One that might be a little worse would be Speed Boost. Becoming faster after every turn could quickly turn a good to moderate Pokemon into a potential sweeper. I think all of the hidden ability speed boosters could probably survive the cut, but the fragile bug types that rely on this gimmick might struggle. They are pretty fast to begin with, but a single rock move could end it all for them, so it's a give and take. Other really great abilities that see a lot of use are Magic Guard and Magic Bounce. Magic Guard prevents damage from anything but direct attacks, so no entry hazards or even damage taken from status conditions. And Magic Bounce reflects back any non-attacks, such as entry hazards or status conditions, or even just stat lowering. So that would ding a number of Megas, assuming that they're still going to be around, or at the very least people wouldn't bother using these Psychic types as much if they couldn't bounce back the enemy's tricks at a moment's notice. And while Clefable or Reuniclus might be able to survive the removal of Magic Guard, the already frail Alakazam will most definitely be hurting with the chip damage from everything, including weather. And speaking of weather, that would be another big shift, in that people would dump most of the weather setters like they were hot if they couldn't induce a meteorological change just by being there. Weather already took a bit of a hit by no longer being permanent, but it also saw a bump when some Pokemon got buffed into becoming weather setters later on. But now nobody would bother with Politoed anymore, and Abomasnow would become all but completely useless. But I do think all of these Sandstreamers would actually be pretty fine. And that's another big factor to consider as well, since certain Pokemon have specific gimmicks that are almost exclusively the reason why people would ever bother with them. Take Prankster. Now, it's not the case for everyone that has the ability, but for a lot of them, the capability of gaining priority on status moves is their sole reason for popularity. You think people would actually use Whimsicott or Klefki if they weren't lightning fast with their trickery? Some of these Pokemon might still be able to pull off the full support sets for the team, but not being able to ensure that Encore goes first would take away the incentive to use these Pokemon without setting up a bunch of agilities first. And sometimes ability gimmicks are only for one Pokemon with a signature ability, like Imposter with Ditto. Now Ditto can still transform, but the whole point of Imposter was that you could mirror the foe the second you reached the field, rather than wasting a turn. But that's nothing compared to Greninja, who, if abilities did disappear, would be let down not once, but twice. Greninja's hidden ability is Protean, which makes it a dominant force and competitive. Becoming any type you choose just before your attack could throw a wrench into anybody's strategy. This is also the hidden ability of Kecleon, and the new Cinderace line has an identical ability as well, so none of them can benefit from this. But Greninja also has the special ability Battle Bond that lets it turn into Ash Greninja. I don't much care for the concept of my Pokemon turning into somebody else, but it does buff his stats. so losing out on 2 potential winning abilities would really put a downer on the Greninja fan club. Stripping Wobbuffet of Shadow Tag would also be rough, since that is its only way of being useful. If Wobbuffet can no longer trap its enemies, then people will just switch out willy-nilly. The other Pokemon that can get Shadow Tag would probably do okay overall, but nobody would ever be scared of this punching bag again if instead of being forced into retaliation, they could just leave. But I would have to say, if there's one Pokemon that would be completely destroyed by removal of abilities, it would be Shedinja. This husk of a ghost Pokemon only exists because of its ability. Wonder Guard protects Shedinja from any moves that are not super effective. This is especially needed because of the single hit point Shedinja can have. So if you remove that caveat, even the tiniest, weakest, not very effective hit would squash this thing. Except for False Swipe, but that's a normal type move anyway. Now even the lightest tap of a level 1 Vine Whip would do it in. Not having abilities would make Shedinja go from brittle but with a gimmick to completely unusable. But it's not only downsides if abilities were no longer in the game, because some of them could actually improve the Pokemon by being removed. There are some pretty useless abilities that don't really do much, like Heavy Metal or even Light Metal, which just alters the weight of a Pokemon. So if you have the heavier one, you'll get extra damage from Low Kick or Grass Knot, and the lighter one weakens your Heavy Slam and other such moves. So I think a nice middle ground would make Duraludon a little more at ease with his vacillating weight. An ability that is completely useless is Honey Gather. It's like Pickup, but only with finding honey, which has limited functionality in the past and currently has no use whatsoever in the games. So filling up your bag with impractical jars of sticky goop for no reason would actually lift a burden off of these Pokemon. Now depending on who you ask, Illuminate could be one of the worst abilities out there. All it does is increase the likelihood that you'll encounter wild Pokemon. This can come in handy if you're looking for wild Pokemon, but if you didn't know your team member had it, you might get a little annoyed at the above average interruptions. So, getting rid of these bioluminescent Pokemon's curse of alerting everything to your presence would really be a good thing to most players that despise the inevitable wild encounter. I'm also not a fan at all of lowering your own stats. If it's after a superpower or something, that's a little bit different, but to have no choice and it always be lowered, to me, that means you definitely need a different ability. And Hustle is one such case, where your attack is raised, but at the cost of some accuracy, which is not at all a trade that I would ever make. Because if even a 100% accurate move can now miss, what do you think will happen with the even worse ratio moves? If you're going to need 2 turns to take out a target anyway, 1 turn to miss, and the second to actually hit, you might as well just hit the target twice with a regular powered move and have a different ability. And what's even worse is that I didn't realize just how widespread this ability could be. So making sure that all of these Pokemon weren't randomly missing their moves would be a big benefit to everyone. Weak Armor is another stat-lowering ability. This time, if you're hit, your defense goes down and your speed sharply increases. That can be fine for some, but a lot of these Pokemon are fairly slow to begin with. So I don't think cranking up a Slugma's speed is going to change much, especially if you just made it weaker to the next hit. It's literally got weak in the name. Nobody wants an ability that has lose written all over it, so getting rid of a mandatory trade-off that not everyone might want would certainly help this, once again, surprisingly large pool of Pokemon stay afloat. Now, one of the absolute worst abilities that's nothing but a detriment is Klutz, which makes it so that the Pokemon can't hold any items. Item holding was just as big a game changer as abilities themselves, so negating both of them in one fell swoop at seems almost like a punishment. So making it go away would be a welcome change. There are once again some signature abilities that could be a benefit if removed, like some people have said Normalize is a disadvantage to the Delcatty line. And even though I have made use of it before, it probably would be nice to be able to fight ghosts. But that's nothing compared to the likes of Defeatist, which is Archeop's exclusive ability that halves its attacks when it gets below half health. This obliterates any long-term usefulness this prehistoric bird might have had. So if it wasn't a literal defeatist, a more positive outlook would certainly help this Pokémon. The same is true for the Slow Start ability restricted to Regigigas, and what is possibly the worst ability in the game, Truant. Slow Start cripples you right off the bat, but if you could somehow leg it out, I guess you could get something done with the Regimaster. However, Truant sticks around the whole time and causes every other turn to be a waste. Now, Truant can be on Durant as a hidden ability, but the only reason people ever use it is for a gimmick set of handicapping the opposing team by entraining this horrible ability onto them. So the slacking line would certainly be a much different story if it didn't have to eternally play Red Light, Green Light. Some people might say that these abilities are necessary to keep these Pokémon from being overpowered, but here's the thing, you can just make them less powerful in the design stages of the game. If you need to invent a way to nerf a Pokémon, maybe just drop that attack stat by a few points, you know? There might be some Pokémon out there that could arguably be better or worse off with different abilities removed, but if we did see abilities revoked on a broader scale, these Pokémon would unquestionably benefit the most, and create a whole new battling landscape. What Pokémon do you think would be the most impacted without their abilities? There's clearly many more, so let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!